Hello, welcome back to the channel and thanks for watching. Today we'll discuss a very important topic, important at least for watch enthusiasts. For normal people, I'm guessing this couldn't matter less. I'm referring to in-house versus generic movements. So, how important in-house movements really are, not for the watch market, but for you as a watch lover. Should you let perhaps the expensive price associated with in-house movements deter you from enjoying the more affordable timepieces powered by generic movements? In this video, although I will not necessarily answer such questions for you, I will at least share some relevant facts and perhaps raise even more questions. I'm not going to do this to make things less clear, quite the opposite actually. My hope is to convince you that the watch world has something good to offer to everybody. I'm sure you're all aware that some watch manufacturers describe their movements as in-house. This typically means that the company designs, develops and manufactures the movement components themselves, rather than relying on external suppliers. It's often considered a mark of quality and craftsmanship in the watchmaking industry. This is a common approach, despite some movements being based on existing, well-known generic movements, produced by manufacturers like ETA, for example. In such cases, the manufacturer might modify or customize these movements to suit their own specifications, adding unique features or enhancements. This practice has generated discussions within the watch enthusiast community about what truly constitutes an in-house movement. I'm gonna give you some examples of movements described as in-house but based on generic movements. IWC in-house caliber 79320, the base generic movement is a Valjoux 7750. Tag Heuer in-house caliber 1887, the base generic movement is a Seiko TC78. To give you another interesting example, the Omega Deville coaxial chronometer was powered by the caliber 2500, which was initially based on the ETA 2A92-A2, and then Omega added their proprietary coaxial escapement technology to it. While Omega did enhance the movement with the coaxial escapement, this example highlights the nuances in the industry's terminology regarding in-house movements. It's also worth noting that even the most prestigious watch brands have at some point used movements made by other manufacturers. Early Patek Philippe Calatrava models, like the reference 96, used movements from Victorine Piguet. Audemars Piguet utilized movements from Jaeger-LeCoultre in certain models, like for example the Royal Oak, first introduced in 1972. This was initially powered by a movement based on a Jaeger-LeCoultre caliber. Cartier tank models, such as the Louis Cartier tank, relied on movements from Jaeger-LeCoultre and Audemars Piguet. Known for its aviation watches, Breitling initially used movements from Valjoux, Venus and Lemania. The Breitling Navitimer, for example, an iconic aviation watch, was initially powered by Valjoux 72. These examples showcase how many watch brands, including some of the most respected ones, started their journey by utilizing movements from established suppliers, before gradually transitioning to more proprietary designs. The perception of watch enthusiasts regarding in-house versus generic movements has evolved over time due to several factors. One significant catalyst for this change was the quartz crisis during the 1970s and 1980s. The influx of affordable quartz watches, many of which used mass-produced movements, led traditional Swiss mechanical watchmaking to face a crisis. During this period, many traditional Swiss watchmakers struggled to compete with the accuracy and affordability of quartz watches, which prompted a re-evaluation of watchmaking practices. As a response to the quartz crisis, some watch manufacturers began to emphasize traditional mechanical watchmaking and the uniqueness of in-house movements. Swatch Group, which owns ETA, at some point started restricting the supply of movements to external brands. This furthermore encouraged other manufacturers to develop their own movements. The perception shift gained momentum in the 1990s, as watch enthusiasts and collectors increasingly associated in-house movements with exclusivity, innovation, and quality control. Brands that invested in creating their own movements began to use this as a marketing strategy to differentiate themselves from competitors using off-the-shelf movements. The advent of online watch forums, blogs and social media platforms further fueled discussions among watch enthusiasts, allowing them to exchange knowledge and opinions more easily. These platforms facilitated the spread of information about the technical details and origins of movements, contributing to a more informed consumer base. From a practicality point of view, there are arguments to be made that generic movements can offer certain advantages over in-house movements. Generic movements, especially those from established manufacturers like ETA, Selita, and others, often have readily available and standardized parts. This can make servicing and repairs easier and faster, as watchmakers are more likely to have the necessary components on hand. Generic movements are designed with simplicity in mind, which can translate to higher reliability and easier maintenance. Their straightforward design can lead to less complexity and fewer potential points of failure. The most well-known ones have been in use for a long time, with a track record of performance and reliability. Brands that use them can leverage this history to build trust with consumers. Tudor, for example, uses the term manufacturer movement, which aligns with the industry trend of emphasizing in-house production to denote exclusivity, craftsmanship, and quality. While Tudor movements are developed and manufactured under the Rolex umbrella, they often use slightly different materials and specifications compared to Rolex movements. Kenissi is the name of the company responsible for producing movements that are used in Tudor watches. This joint venture was created to further enhance the vertical integration and capabilities of both Rolex and Tudor in terms of movement production. While Rolex has a long history of making their own movements, Kenissi was established to produce additional capacity and expertise specifically for Tudor. Starting from the Tudor Kenissi premise just explained, I think there's an argument to be made that an ETA movement used in a Tissot watch, for example, could be considered in-house. As in the case of Tudor and Kenissi, the Tissot and ETA example, it's also centered around vertical integration within the same corporate group. Like Tudor and Kenissi, which function under the Rolex umbrella, Tissot and ETA are both part of the Swatch Group. This suggests that there could be shared expertise, resources, and oversight in the design and production of movements for both brands. Another similar example can be Seiko, whose movements can generally be considered in-house. They have their own movement-making facilities where they produce a wide range of movements, from simple quartz to high-end mechanical calibers. So whenever a movement produced in these facilities is used to power any of the group's watch brands, be that a very affordable Lorus or an expensive Credor, the movement can be considered in-house. I would say that the same principle applies to Miyota movements, especially when they are used in a Citizen watch. Just like Seiko, Citizen is a vertically integrated watch manufacturer that produces its own movements, dials, cases, and other components. Although this was a longer video compared to what I normally post, I think the topic of in-house versus generic movements is an important one, so my goal here was to share with you some facts which I believe to be essential and are worth considering when thinking of watch movements. Or maybe the whole point of this video is to encourage you to simply buy watches that you like, more importantly that you can afford, and just enjoy them. And you can do that, regardless of movement. But for those looking to dive deeper into this world of watchmaking, perhaps the things I covered in the video will prove useful. I'm curious to know what you think, so please let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please do like and most importantly subscribe so that we can stay in touch. All the best!